Parshat Behar, which comprises Leviticus 25:1 through 26:2, God instructs Moshe on how the agricultural and financial calendar will function once the people enter the land of Israel. We are given the laws of Shemitah, or sabbatical year. Every seventh year, there should be no work whatsoever on the land. This means no sowing, planting, pruning, or harvesting. As well, all debts are to be forgiven. Furthermore, after 7 of such sabbatical years, meaning after 49 years, the 50th year will be declared a Yovel, or Jubilee year. In this year, not only does all work on the land cease and all debts are remitted, but all slaves and prisoners are freed and most properties returned to their ancestral owners. God emphasizes these commands with a powerful proclamation. The land is mine. You are but strangers resident with me. This is such a radical truth that none of us owns the land. None of us owns anything, really. Everything we have is on loan from God, ours only to take care of, to deal with humbly and generously. Relative to the divine, our lives are so short. Relative to the trees of the forest, our responsibility is to respect and honor God's creation during our short time on earth, not to claim creation as our own. This is a major Torah insight for the world to grasp. Even today, when of course we have property rights and those rights are important, there's the deeper truth we must remember, that the land is God's. We are but strangers residing here. Such a truth stands in contrast to both capitalism and communism. In capitalism, the emphasis is on the individual ownership of the land and the labor of the people who work it. In communism, the state owns the land. But the notion that God owns the land offers an alternative to both. In such a model, we must treat the land not as our own, but with the care that the property of God deserves, just as we are to treat each other and ourselves with care. In this way, the work that we do in protecting the environment is a Torah value. Fighting for meaningful action against climate change is a Torah value. Because in these struggles, we are staying true to Leviticus 25:23 and the reminder that we are guests on God's earth. That said, despite their philosophical beauty and import, implementing sabbatical and jubilee years could destroy systems of commerce and agriculture. We cannot feed people if we are instructed not to partake in agriculture for a year. We cannot have a functioning economy if debt is so unreliable. What allowed us to keep the laws of Parshat Behar without destroying our livelihoods was a series of 3 rabbinic innovations that provided creative ways around the laws. The first is Pruzbul, which was developed by Hillel the Elder at the tail end of the Second Temple period. The Pruzbul is a legal declaration, one made in court, before a loan is executed, specifying that the law of Shemitah will not apply to the loan in question. Essentially, it's a way for lenders to make loans that a sabbatical year or jubilee year won't cancel. Why is this necessary? Well, the law of Shemitah is great in theory by canceling debts. Financially vulnerable people would not get trapped indefinitely in debt. However, the truth is that the law created a problem. The Talmud teaches us that Hillel noticed that people were refraining from lending to one another around the time of the sabbatical year out of concern that the debtor would not repay the loan, which actually made financially vulnerable people more vulnerable because they could not find a lender. To solve this problem, Pruzbul was created, thus giving lenders the confidence to lend to people even immediately before the Shemitah year, and in this way getting more resources to poor people. The second great innovation is Heter Iska. We haven't mentioned this yet, but in Parshat Behar, there's also a commandment forbidding us from ever charging interest on loans. Heter Iska is a work around this prohibition. If there's no interest, there's no incentive to loan money. If people aren't loaning money, then it's harder to get mortgages or loans to start businesses. In the Talmud, the rabbis were already finding ways to evade this prohibition by reimagining a business loan as a business transaction. Heter Iska, which literally translates to business permit, formalizes this workaround, changing the terms of the transaction such that instead of a lender and borrower or creditor and debtor. There's an investor and a receiver. Instead of charging interest on a loan, the investor is guaranteed a return on their investment. In essence, it redefines loans as investments. Thus, what is being earned is not interest, but profit. The third innovation is the most recent and deals with the prohibition against working the land of Israel during the Shemitah year. It's a compromise called heter mechira, in which the Jew who owns the land sells it temporarily to a Gentile who can then work the land. There's actually many examples in our tradition of transfer of ownership in order to avoid a halachic issue. For example, the sale of chametz on Pesach dates back to Mishnaic times. But heter mechira emerged only in the advent of modern Zionism, as Jews began once again working the land of Israel. Between 1888 and 1903, the heter mechira was used as an emergency measure to allow the survival of newfound agricultural settlements in Eretz Yisrael. These heter mechira interpreted the Shemitah year to be a prohibition, not against working the land altogether, but against Jews specifically working the land. The practice became more stringent under Rav Kook of blessed memory, the first chief rabbi of modern Eretz Yisrael, who allowed only non-Jews to perform the 4 labors forbidden by Torah: sowing, planting, pruning, harvesting, regardless of the change in ownership. What's important is that these innovations allowed the young state of Israel to continue to grow and thrive, benefiting both the Jews who own the land, the non-Jews who work the land for profit, and the many people who were thus fed. In general, there's something deeply exciting about all this rabbinic innovation, as our sages found ways to honor Torah law while also adapting it so that we could continue to thrive. But that said, something is lost here. We've come so far from the place we started. The land is mine. You are but strangers, resident with me. The innovations of Pruzbul, Heter Iska, and Heter Mechira are important, yes. But we might ask ourselves, how do we adapt Torah to the realities of the day while not losing the essence? After all, we live in a Judaism that is in some ways so far from its essence. Our lives, with all their technology and geopolitics, are unimaginable to our sages. We are a modern people. They were an ancient people. There's so much between us, and yet this is not a tragic problem. It's a spiritual opportunity. I'm not saying we should get rid of interest on loans. I'm not naive about what it takes for a market to function. But I am saying, how can we honor the essence of the laws of Shemitah and Yovel in how we treat the land and each other? How can we advocate globally for systems that put people above profits? The answer will vary person to person. For you, that may mean supporting unions or pushing governments to take global warming more seriously. Or it may mean choosing to make a change in your own home and commit more fully to composting and sustainable landscaping. We all have access to a more elevated approach to Judaism when we hold the biblical essence that makes us Jews alongside the rabbinic evolutions that allowed us to survive as a people. Shabbat Shalom.